be the topic of the video today. Halfway into this, every single one of these brought to you by coffee. Coffee's good for you. Right, and welcome to another one of these. Through my eyes, the LGBTQ plus indoctrination of our children. I'm sure you've seen the news lately, and I'm sure that you have seen that yet another trans person has decided to shoot up a school. A Catholic school at that, I think is what it was. But a trans woman named Robert decided that he, because he hates Trump, is going to shoot up a Catholic school, killing 2 children and injuring multiple others. Trans activist. And in his manifesto, he's staring at himself, a demon version of himself, talking in Russian. I do believe it is time to classify this for what it is, a mental illness that has gone unchecked for the last 10 years or so, and it really, really needs to be checked. These people really do not have a place in our country other than in a mental health facility getting the help that they deserve. According to a recent study from UCLA, documenting that the number of people in the U.S. who identify as transgender are more than 2.8 million people nationwide. Of those, 11,000 adults identify as transgender in Maine, which is the state that I live in, and roughly 1% of the population. The study also found that out of that 11,000, 2,900 children aged 13 to 17 identify as transgender, and that represents just 3.5% of the state's population within that age group. What? That doesn't sound right at all. How can a 13 to 17-year-old decide that they're transgender? If you ask me, it's because somebody told them they were. Somebody's indoctrinating our children. A memo from the U.S. Office of Personnel Management dated on January 29th, 2025 states the intent by the Trump administration to end federal funding for gender ideology. The memo was written by then acting director Charles Ezell, cited that Donald Trump's executive order defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government is the reason for the ending of this funding. Ezell's memo instructed federal agencies to, among other things, review all agency contracts and grants and terminate any that promote or include gender ideology, and begin working to close and end all initiatives, offices, and programs that inculcate, which I have no idea what that word means. I guess it's supposed to be include or promote gender ideology. I wholeheartedly agree with that, because why do we have so much propaganda aimed towards children about trans ideology, considering it is a well-known biological fact that the brain doesn't mature until after the age of 21, 22. So why then are we telling children between the ages of 13 and 17 that they're trans? Why are we pushing to mold a child's brain into thinking there's something that they're not? In light of a new executive order issued, I don't remember when the executive order was issued, but the information said yesterday, so I'm thinking this was in March. At the federal level, the Maine Department of Education is providing the following clarifications for school administration units. The executive order defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government applies to federal government agencies only and does not inhibit the force of Maine law or locally adopted school board policies. Really? Really? See, this is what the school board is telling, or this is what your elected officials are telling the Maine Department of Education when it comes to Donald Trump's executive order, the boss, the president of the United States, that they don't need to listen to it because it's only about federal things. Last time I checked, schools are federal. They're covered by the federal government. Why else are they also closed on federal holidays? Maine SAUs are expected to abide by the Maine Human Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of protected class in employment, housing, places of public accommodation, education, and extension of credit. Protected classes include race, color, ancestry, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, which according to the Maine Department of Education includes gender identity and expression. It doesn't. Physical or mental disability, religion, age, and other categories in certain contexts. The MHRA also prohibits retaliation for asserting MHRA protected rights. School curricula, from health education through social studies and history classes, should include age and pedagogically appropriate materials related to LGBTQ people and issues. Why? The absence of acknowledgement or materials about LGBTQ plus people disserves all students and can itself become a statement that LGBTQ plus people are not valued parts of the school community. Really? So, if you don't teach about LGBTQ plus in schools, that makes them feel like they don't, that they aren't included? Really? What about the straight kids, right? Do you think that this makes them feel less included because you're focusing on LGBTQ plus curriculum that has no place in schools? I'd like to know where this has a place in school curriculum. As a parent, where does this have a place in school curriculum? But let's go further. There are significant curriculum resources in Maine and across the country that can contribute to making our school curriculum more inclusive and prepare our students for life in an increasingly diverse state and country. And teaching about sexuality does that how? Sexuality has nothing to do with diversity. Diversity has more to do with your skin color, culture, and where you come from. And where a lot of these cultural people in our country come from, LGBTQ plus people are considered abominations and are eradicated. So, are you therefore going to acknowledge that with all of these new diverse people we have in the country? Are you going to acknowledge that in their culture, LGBTQ plus people get eradicated? No? I didn't think so. But yet, these efforts should complement and even include the full racial, indigenous, tribal, and immigrant diversity of our state and our nation. But yet still, I ask, why are you teaching about LGBTQ? Because in other cultures, it's an abomination. They kill you types of people. The school's health curriculum, particularly a high-quality human growth and development curriculum, is critical for all students' health and well-being. This curriculum should be LGBTQ inclusive. No, it shouldn't. Age-appropriate. so therefore LGBTQ shouldn't be involved. Medically accurate, which means T shouldn't be involved. And non-stigmatizing. Except for straight people, right? The main DOE webpage includes the main Family Planning Puberty Happens curriculum as an excellent framework for including LGBTQ plus content into health modules. OUT Maine also has produced a series of curriculum activities correlated with the main learning standards that provide quality in current projects. Well, guess what? When I went to try to go to the OUT Maine Inclusive Curriculum Kits for grades K through 12, it said that the website was no longer available. I wonder why, considering it had a wonderful little flag of maps. Maine data shows that approximately 1 in 7 students identify within the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Oh, so now it's a spectrum. Like autism? Our sexuality is a spectrum now, huh? It would be a disservice in education to not acknowledge that LGBTQ plus people are part of our country's history. Right. Culture. Right. And communities. Incorporating this information into our curriculum, as well as teaching about all our diverse students, better prepares students to interact with an increasingly diverse world. Right. So teaching them about a sexual choice, because that's what it is. It's a choice. You choose to be straight. You choose to be a lesbian. You choose to be bi. You choose to be gay. You choose to be queer, and you choose to be trans. These are choices that you make in life. So why are we pushing it? Why are we pushing our choices onto children? Interesting. The Maine Human Rights Commission memo, dated 2016, recommends that a student give clear notice to their school in writing that they are requesting school personnel use the student's chosen name and pronouns. Choice. Even says it in your own words. Going forward, the school and all school staff shall use the student's preferred name and pronouns consistent with their gender identity on all documents and in all communications. The only exception to this rule is the student's official record, which must bear the student's legal name unless changed by a court order. Local policy may be relevant in then context. Really? So you're willing to acknowledge their imaginary world except for on legal documents. What you don't see anything wrong with that? You don't see anything wrong with feeding into their delusion up to the point where you know that you can't put it on a legal document. Really? Why? You're there to mold and teach children the things that they need to learn to go out into when they go out into the world, to be productive members of society. Feeding into their delusion, feeding into their mental health issues is not going to help that child. It's not going to teach that child anything except for the fact that their delusions are real. I suffered from stress-induced hallucinations when I was in high school. And they sure as hell didn't tell me that it was real. They sure as hell did not tell me that my delusions were real. They did everything possible They even had me sit down with a therapist on a day-to-day basis to talk about my problem so this wouldn't happen again. They didn't feed into my delusion. They made sure I was taken care of and got the help that I needed. So what happened? What happened in America where we decided to, instead of fixing the problem, to feeding into it and allowing it to continue to happen? Consistent with the imperatives for equal educational opportunity, a welcoming learning environment, and non-discrimination, the Human Rights Commission states, all school employees should be required to address the student by the student's chosen name and use pronouns consistent with the student's gender identity. At the student's request, the school also should instruct its students to address the student by the student's chosen name and use pronouns consistent with the student's gender identity. And a school's pattern of refusal to acknowledge a student's gender identity by using their chosen name and pronouns may constitute a violation of the Maine Human Rights Act as well as Maine's bullying law. So not only are we going to have the staff involved in this delusion, we're going to force other people's children to be involved in this child's delusion. Really? And if you don't, it's bullying. If you don't, it goes against the civil rights law. So once again, we are going to take a delusion and we're going to feed into it. We're going to push into this delusion because why the hell not? Right? Right? This is what's wrong with you people. This is what's wrong with America today. We aren't fixing the problem. We are feeding into the problem. We are making the problem worse instead of taking it and fixing it. You know, during COVID, you wanted to inject everybody with a made-up freaking drug to protect them from COVID. So then why are we pushing this delusion of trans ideology, this delusion of LGBTQ ideology that is obviously causing kids to go around and kill other people? Why? Why are we feeding into it, America? This is what happens when you don't fix the problem and you just slap a Band-Aid on it. It doesn't fix it. It gets worse. It doesn't heal. It festers and the wound spreads. And now all across America, we have rights for trans people. We have rights for a mental illness to feed. And now it's killing us. Are you happy, America? For health and well-being, all students need privacy and safety when using restrooms, locker rooms, and other school facilities. Accordingly, students must be permitted to use the bathroom and other sex-separated facilities in accordance with or corresponding most closely to their gender identity. What? So, it's okay to allow a man in a girl's locker room, to allow a boy into a girl's restroom because he identifies as a woman, because he identifies, even though he's not a woman, he is biologically a boy. He's biologically a male, and you're going to allow him into women's restrooms. And when these girls decide to say that they don't feel safe, oh, well, boo-hoo for you. Really? Boo-hoo for you? Boo-hoo for you because this mentally ill boy feels like he's a girl and should be allowed into these locker rooms. Boo-hoo for you. We need to let this mentally ill boy do what he wants to do. That's okay? No, because if I had a daughter in this day and age, that wouldn't be okay, because I'd be teaching my daughter to knock a son of a bitch out if he walks into a girl's locker room or a girl's restroom. When he's not a girl, he's a boy. They should not be pressured or forced to use alternative facilities. Any existing school facilities designed to be used by only one student at a time must be made available to all students. Students who seek more privacy than that afforded by these facilities should be accommodated. Really? All other school-related rules, programs, and activities must ensure that students can comply with a rule or participate in a program or activity consisting with their gender identity in accordance with the Maine Law Court ruling in Doe v. Reg 1, School Unit 2686A.3D 600, Maine 2014. Even though President Trump made an executive order on the federal level that men are not allowed in women's sports and girls' spaces, the state of Maine has decided to say, fuck you, President Trump, and we're going to do what we want to do. This is why the state of Maine has lost its federal funding. This is why the state of Maine is drowning in debt. Governor Mills doesn't care. Governor Mills doesn't give two shits about you, or what your child feels, or whether your little girl feels safe in her women's space, because Governor Mills is going to allow boys in her space. Every single person who has a daughter out there in the state of Maine should be worried about this. You really should. This isn't something you should accept, because what we're doing is we're allowing predators into women's spaces. We are literally allowing predators, and we're growing predators by allowing boys into women's spaces in schools. That's what you're doing. Homegrown predators. Remember that in the next 10 years when these kids start getting in trouble for raping and molesting and violating women. Oh, but they're trans. And just so you know what you're looking at when this is being taught to children, here's some numbers for you. Total number of K through 12 students in the state of Maine is 172,622. The number of students in Maine districts with gender policies, meaning that they don't have to tell the parent if their child decides that they want to identify as a different gender. There's 101,983 students with this policy under their name. That's 101,000, almost 102,000 students out of 173,000 that have a policy stating that their parents don't need to be told that they're identifying as a different gender in school. Really? So now we're hiding it from the parents. We're hiding the mental illness from the parents now. What are we doing, people? Really? A parent, the person who should be taking care of their child, and you're not telling the parents? So you're feeding into this ideology. You're allowing this mental illness to grow. Thank you, Maine teachers. You're doing such a great job. Parents Defending Education found that a total of 57 public school districts in Maine have policies or guidance that direct staff to keep the gender identity of students hidden from parents. In my school district, that's 3,215 students who identify as trans. Are you fucking kidding me? Where did they get this idea? Where do the kids get this idea? Parents, schools, pushing the ideology and teaching the ideology and teaching these kids that they are not who they're born to be. And that's okay, because growing up, when I was growing up as a kid, we taught kids to be who they are. You are who you are. Don't change who you are. Be proud of who you are. But yet today we are telling children they are not who they are something different. But here makes it something that even concretes it even more in my state. It is a hate crime to speak out against this. Maine's hate law includes both sexual orientation and gender identity. The law provides penalty enhancements for a crime motivated by the victim's actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity, amongst other categories. So it is a hate crime to speak out against this. It is a hate crime. I was almost charged with a hate crime for having my June as Men's Mental Health Month, not Pride Fag Month. They were against that. I almost got charged with a hate crime for that because it's not. It's a crime to speak out against a mental illness, to speak out against an ideology that is destroying our children, that is grooming our children. It's a hate crime to speak out against that. And that is horrible. Horrible. A world in which children's bodies are up for public debate is not a safe and inclusive one. Our state has a long history of protecting individual rights, from reproductive freedoms to marriage equality. We consistently support the idea that all people should have control over their bodies and their lives without political or governmental interference. Allowing the government to dictate who can participate in public life or how we should manage our bodies is a blatant and dangerous rollback of these values. Every child should be able to show up as their full self on the field, in the classroom, and in life. That's why we're urging our lawmakers to vote against transgender athlete bans and oppose LDs 233, 868, and 1134. They are literally telling people to allow this to happen, that we need to allow transgenderism to happen in our state, in our schools. Why? You used to make sure that people who had a mental illness would go out and get the help that they needed. Now you're denying people that help. Instead, you're taking transgenderism and you're allowing it to happen. You're not fixing the problem, you're allowing it to breed. You're not helping the mental issues, you're allowing it to fester. I'm supposedly a dangerous person because I suffer from CPTSD with ADHD and hallucinations. I'm a dangerous person. But yet transgenderism is okay. I'm perfectly fine with the person that I am, the person that I was born as. Transgender people have a problem with identifying who they are, with who they're born as. A social contagion that's been pushed on social media, that's been pushed now in schools, that has been being pushed now in state government. It's now being protected. Even it's not being fixed, it's being protected, it's being allowed to grow. Why? Why are we allowing it to grow instead of fixing it? Because it's not normal for a person to think that they are not who they are born as. That is not a normal feeling. That is an ingrained, put into your brain feeling. Somebody told them that. And now they feel weird. Now they don't know who they are. And we need to put them back to who they are. Not allow them to change into something that they're not. Now, Title IX was originally signed into law by President Nixon back in June 23rd, 1972. It was a law to prohibit sex discrimination in federally funded education programs. Okay? This allowed boys and girls to have their own sports teams in school, and now it has become a weapon used by the trans community to put men into women's spaces, and the LGBT community and their supporters are losing their minds over the fact that Trump has made this now an executive order. To remove them from this order, to ensure the safety of our young women, and to allow them the opportunities that they deserve. See, you people want to protect trans people, but at the same time, you want to deny biological women. You want to deny what a woman is. So feminists, what do you have to say about that? Transgenderism, they have destroyed what a man and a woman are. And you people allowed it. Are you happy with the world that you have made? Are you happy now? Do you like the all-inclusive world that you have made. We need to stand up and take our voices, put our voices out there, and let people know that we will not stand for this bullshit. Because that's what this is. It is 100% bullshit. Because there is no reason under any sky in any state that we should be allowing transgenderism, LGBTQ community bullshit to be taught to our children. Look what it has done. People have died over this. And even when people transition, I wonder, has anyone talked to Elliot Page lately? How are they doing? Look how unhinged and unhappy trans people are. And that's okay. If you're unhappy, go get help. Don't sit there and believe on social media and whatnot that you are something that you're not. Don't sit there and take what the LGBTQ community is telling you as fact. Because I can tell you right now, there is no biological fact that you are not who you were made to be. That you are not who you are biologically born as. If trans people want to sit there and say God doesn't make mistakes, why are you changing yourself? If God doesn't make mistakes, why do you believe that you are not the gender that you were born? Because God made you who you are. God made you in your mother's womb. And when you were born, that is what God wanted you to be. Now, whether you believe in God or not, that's between you and God. But even if you believe in science, science is the same exact way. You want to sit there and tell me that science is wrong? That the science of human biology is wrong? No. And not only that, and I'm just going to leave you with this one final thing. The B in LGBTQ means that there's only two genders. So you people are contradicting yourselves. I hope you all are having a good one. Peace, love, God bless. And I hope you learned something today through my eyes. And President, she wishes.